Preface. Caught in a storm. A stranger pulled this body back from the platform edge as a dirty subway train raced into the station. "What the hell are you doing?" he yelled as he pulled me back from the edge. My entire frame was hypercharged with mania and my mind streaming with voices. When I caught my breath in the ambulance, and when I think about his question now through the diverse and strange lenses of human memory, I didn't know. I seem to have had no choice in the matter. Few people outside of doctors' offices have heard this episode from my younger days. I spent years in those waiting rooms and consulting rooms, desperately coping with immense mental suffering. I still use some of those spaces as memory palaces. Their walls and corners, furniture and bookcases, and even the doctors themselves help me memorize far better medicine than they ever prescribed. But back then I followed their advice, often without question, and many pharmacies around the world now serve as memory palaces too. Good medicine, bad medicine, every pill has its place in the story of how this self assembles with people around the world to joyously teach, mostly for free, the memory techniques that saved my life and keep saving it. And none of it would have happened if a stranger hadn't tackled a confused mental patient who was about to commit suicide. As I remember it, I wasn't actually committed to suicide. Rather, a phantasmal blitzkrieg of impulses bombarded me, fueled by self-destructive notions that had been pummeling me for years and would pound on for many more. It was spring. I had just been released from the Clark Institute for Mental Health, and I was a mess. As I stood in the humid Bloor station that evening in Toronto, my head was pulsing and warm with angelic voices telling me that everyone would understand because everybody wanted me to do it. An auditory version of Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel ceiling besieged me. I couldn't see them, but I heard floating in space around me everyone in the world, people known and unknown, gently urging me to the end. The bridge, cars crossing the bridge, the subway. "Whatever it takes," said a voice I felt more than heard, a synesthesia signal that seemed to come straight from the pages of a William S. Burroughs novel. Just get it done. My nerves were shattered from a massive manic episode. I had spent 3 months in the hospital, where most of my time had been devoted to arguing that I didn't need to take their pills, not lithium, and certainly not Risperdal. As I explained with boundless manic energy during my incarceration, I had discovered a secret relationship between the Latinate alphabet and the Arabic symbols for 1 and 0. One built the other and provided the code for finally unveiling the ultimate truth of reality as a kind of language. When the doctors succeeded in briefly convincing me my enhanced state and jumbled ideas were a problem, I gave them long, rambling lectures about how only a Marxist psychotherapist could possibly cure me because clearly capitalism was the true source of schizophrenia. These medical professionals repaid my willingness to engage in philosophical debates about my condition by handing me a diagnosis of bipolar disorder with psychosis. They followed this death sentence, or so it felt, for many years, with hours of occupational counseling. Rather than work on my resume or work on matching my skills with a suitable job, these sessions actually involved instructions on finding lodging in a boarding home and securing welfare. According to these wizards, devoted to helping people re-enter society, I would never return to university or be employable. Indeed, the myriad of professionals I saw every day in the hospital seemed devoted to fulfilling this dark outcome because they practically married me to disaster as if to ice the cake of my diagnosis. As soon as they released me, I took up residence with another patient with whom I'd started an unusual affair. We not only had the blessing of our doctors, but also their institutional prediction that everything should be fine. Some patients are very successful in supporting each other, we were told. Things weren't fine, and we two patients had the mutual support skills of mice caring for cats in a small cage. I found myself in an 18th floor apartment compelled by ceaseless urges to jump out the window. I obsessively imagined myself as Spider-Man leaping from balcony to balcony, wondering when my webbing would run dry. I woke up startled from medicated sleep, dreaming about acrobatic powers I didn't want, only to find the nightmare was real and the next pill in the bottle offered no cure. To escape these height-induced urges, I wandered the streets and listened to the spirits in the sky. I played mental chess to keep my body from pouncing into traffic and eventually wound up in a McDonald's on Yonge Street. My hands shook so badly I couldn't get my new, child-proofed pill bottles open. I felt nauseous from the lithium and terrified by warnings from the doctors about lithium toxicity. If I missed a dose, I was told, there would be horrible consequences. I was okay now, they told me, a high-functioning manic depressive. But they took pains to show me examples of others in the mental ward who had failed to comply. These were unkempt zombies mumbling conspiratorial poetry whose battle-worn faces were scarred by self-induced wounds. In the smoking room, one woman blew on the cherry of her cigarette to maximize its heat before taking out her eye. They stopped her in time, but you couldn't have arranged a better haunted house on a Hollywood budget if you wanted to film Dante walking the circles of the past, present, and future hell. These were the tortures I could expect for failing to take my pills on time, every time, for the rest of my life. I don't remember what I told the stranger that night after he tackled me on the platform. I don't even remember how I got there. But I do remember that after this kind stranger hauled me back from the platform edge, I was soon on my way back to the hospital, this time for a long sleep on the floor. They didn't have a bed for me this time around, but they did have a pill. It was the biggest, whitest pill I'd ever swallowed. Later, they gave me more. I remember noticing the aroma of a burger and fries in my backpack as the new pill took hold. It was the barely eaten meal from McDonald's I could hardly get down my lithium-sick throat. But I was too poor and trained by years of hunger to waste food, so I'd shoved it into my bag along with a copy of Don DeLillo's Underworld and a course kit packed with enough French critical theory to start a revolution. But not that night. Nurses took my belt and my shoelaces, leaving me with trembling hands in empty pockets. Strangely, they let me keep the twin garrets of my backpack with 2 straps perfect for hanging myself, but I was too doped to move. I woke to the smell of rancid meat slathered in sugary ketchup, my mind already rambling through what felt like 1,000 devious plans to die. Later, a nurse rifled through my belongings and asked if I still wanted to eat the garbage she found. I accepted another pill instead and wept over the grease stain, now marring the beautiful reading materials I couldn't have concentrated on no matter how hard my love of reading tried to cut through the fog in my head. I was 22, and this is what my life had become. Stints in mental institutions and perilous episodes outside them. I wasn't getting better, and under the half-interested watch of Canada's medical system, this third circle of hell, or was it the 5th, was just the beginning. What this book is really about. This is a book about how I did manage to get better, how I dragged myself back to stable ground following the Toronto subway incident, and how I've done it again many times since. In the end, the reason I got better was because I got sick. Sick of seeking peace through pills and hospitals. Instead, I found solace in 2 secondary regimes of treatment I'd been exploring for years: memory training and meditation, primarily with some biohacking thrown in for good measure. Biohacking, still a relatively new term, refers to science-guided self-experimentation to improve one's body. And that mind you experience in your head, there's good reason to believe it's produced by your body too, through the brain. Improve your body and you stand a good chance to free yourself from the kind of mental suffering that nearly took my life. The more I made memory and meditation practices my primary source of stability and then began to biohack, the more life improved. In retrospect, I recognized these techniques had been healing me incrementally all along. In fact, consistent meditation practice combined with memory training has done more for me than any medication, legal or not, that I've tried. Far more than I ever could have imagined when I began exploring. Am I cured? Am I entirely well? Well, no, but I did complete the BA that drove me to the subway platform edge, and I have gone on to finish 2 MAs and a PhD. I've written more than 15 books, started 2 online businesses, and essentially given manic depression the boot. My mental state is at peace, my body is healthy and fit, my relationships are strong and stable, I do my favorite things every day, play music, read and write, and share what I've learned with others through teaching. By using, experimenting with, and developing the tools and techniques I'll describe throughout this book, I learned to sustain a positive process of self-transformation and ongoing maintenance. All this, and yet my brain surely remains similar to what it was before. So what's the difference? I've learned to separate myself from the mental chaos that used to rule my mind, after serious reductions in thought, earned through experiments in achieving optimal well-being. This book is about my journey before and after applying a meditation and memory-focused program described by Gary Weber in Happiness Beyond Thought. But this book you're hearing now has a dual purpose, to share both my journey through the storm and the techniques that enabled me to sail to calm waters. By telling the story and detailing the techniques that enabled me to thrive, I hope to help others learn to find peace and even victory in life every day. What does meditation have to do with memory? Their combination is the key. Memory and cognitive functioning in general are inhibited when we're feeling stressed, nervous, or anxious, and relaxation can counter this effect and help us remember more and better. Since writing my first book on memory training for learning German vocabulary, I've understood how to calm my mind and generate states of deep concentration and creativity through meditation. Relaxation techniques have helped me both learn and use memory techniques and accomplish so much, including teaching others the techniques. I only recently realized that this understanding of the connections among the techniques, learning and meditation for mental well-being, needed more explanation, especially so others can benefit from them as I have. As the author of thousands of articles, podcasts, and videos about memory techniques and language learning, I've received thousands of emails from people struggling to focus and concentrate. Most would take to memory techniques like ducks to water if they could just calm their mental noise. Even if these people could achieve only temporary release from what Sam Harris refers to as the committee chewing up so much mental space, they could begin creating the mnemonics that would drive their learning dreams. This book is my attempt to help you if you're anything like these people, and perhaps you'll find benefit even if you're not. I only hope you're not starting as far down in the jaws of an illness as I did. As you'll also find throughout the book, I am a proponent of using a variety of tools and techniques to enhance well-being. Why use only an Allen wrench when you have a whole toolbox at your disposal? The benefits compound when you use a range of the fantastic mental gizmos you'll discover in this book to work on one project, yourself, from different angles, including the mental, physical, and even spiritual, though you'll find no religion in my kit, even if I espouse the memorization of scripture from a variety of traditions. Before continuing, we need to talk about the main word we'll be using throughout our journey. You see, one of the many quirks of English is how memory seems singular when it is in fact many things. Our autobiographical memory is subject to change. We often remember things that either did not happen or happened differently than we remember. Some scientists think this happened because the brain changes the location and character of our memories each time we recall them. Then we have episodic memory, figural memory, semantic memory, and more terms than we need to list in these pages. Memory techniques, on the other hand, demonstrate that the brain can remember some things and keep them intact. The techniques in this book make it possible to remember certain kinds of information, vocabulary, numbers, names, playing cards, with stunning accuracy. For this reason, it is important not to confuse malleable content with information that does not change. The techniques that help us accurately lock down useful types of information can override the stories we tell about ourselves, leading to incorruptible recall of simple things that set you free on demand. Some of the best is both ancient and new every time you use it, but always the same. What matters is you follow the rules. When you do, the rules will set you free. This is what Tony Buzan, co-founder of the World Memory Championships and proponent of radiant thinking, told me. I've thought a lot about what these rules might be, and they boil down to something that really will set you F-R-E-E. Frequent practice while relaxed and focused on relevant information in a state of experimentation and entertainment. How exactly to implement these rules will unfold in stages as you listen and begin to apply the techniques. More than applying them as such, they need to be practiced consistently. If you make yourself a student of the rules, not any particular teacher of them, their logic really will set you free. Although not a perfect circle, this FREE acronym will soon reinforce itself, and you will experience how the benefits deepen the more you practice. Please write it down and remember it. Story time and suggestion time. As much of this book tells the story of my own redemption, it is an instructional guide too. Like many such programs, the main points could be compressed onto a few index cards. Some listeners will question why I've filled time with so much sound poetry. For those listeners, the exercises will serve and you can skip directly to them. The audiobook table of contents is included with your care package and Victorious Mind Maximizer at magneticmarymethod.com/VMM. Most of us, however, need space and context, and often stories, to percolate abstract ideas and isolated instructions. Some learners need to know about techniques in great detail. This need will be served. Others gain understanding through narrative and context. For these listeners, I share my story. Some need to know the reasons why and how certain techniques work. While it is not always clear, whenever possible, I share the brain science I'm aware of and a wide variety of sources they can follow up. I've included stories from my own life for a few reasons. First, many people have loved Moonwalking with Einstein, Joshua Foer's incredible study of the memory competition world and how he rose through its ranks. Listeners new to memory techniques, though, have complained that he doesn't do much teaching. That's understandable. It's hard to perceive the great wisdom he shares about memory techniques when you've never used them before. Similar complaints have risen regarding Lynn Kelly's The Memory Code, a book which doesn't even express the teaching of memory techniques as its purpose. Rather, it's a very good book focused on the role of memory strategies in the survival of cultures deep into history. If you already use memory techniques, you'll perceive many wonderful angles that supplement and improve your practice because previous experience allows you to see more. She's recently followed it up with Memory Craft, which dives deeper into the techniques themselves and includes stories of her own. Highly recommended. The Victorious Mind is different from these examples because it combines personal history with science-based technical instruction for both memory and meditation, focused on helping people cope with and potentially resolve mental health issues. I have done my best to serve every preference simultaneously. I always explain what these exercises and techniques are, how they work, and why they are useful, along with suggested steps to take. This means I tell stories, present scientific evidence in support of claims, take you on a few theoretical odysseys, and guide you step by step through what Lynn Kelly might call the crafting of procedures that will help you remember more and enjoy peace of mind. Nonetheless, memory techniques are technical. Theory about them is pivotal in the same way knowledge of scales enables good musicians to make great music. The hundreds of thousands of discussion posts on the internet about using memory techniques well testify to the value of these theoretical ins and outs for serious practitioners. The same is true of meditation techniques, and my hope is that using stories as entry points will help more people engage in applying the exercises as well as make the technical aspects more interesting and accessible. How this book is different. This book differs from other memory books because I've come to believe memory training and meditation go hand in hand. By taking up a memory training practice, you may well receive many of the same benefits meditation can bring. My discussion differs from many meditation books as well because it offers instructions and personal stories that contextualize the techniques. Many authors of meditation books leave out personal stories because they claim to have scrubbed out their egos. Other writers make useful reference to biographical matters in ways listeners might miss. None of these authors is wrong in thinking that too much biography creates precisely the attachments they're trying to help people avoid. Other times, there's a great deal of storytelling, but little guidance. I've found James Schwartz a refreshing alternative to these styles. In Mystic by Default, Schwartz shares his personal story of how he came to be a teacher and guardian of the Vedanta school of Hindu philosophy. If you know his other books and other teachings on this tradition, then by reading Mystic by Default, you are richly rewarded with insights into Vedanta. If you don't, you are richly rewarded by a well-written narrative. My experiences with these books and many others like them led me to the hybrid approach used here. For some listeners, this fusion of styles will work gangbusters. Others, who just want the details of instruction, will find these too. But stories have power, including the power to heal. As Brené Brown points out, when we deny our stories, they define us. When we own our stories, we get to write a brave new ending. If my stories of overcoming major limitations help you own your stories, perhaps you'll be encouraged to take action. Perhaps you'll rise to meet the challenges of these techniques and thus experience the rich rewards they offer. The uncomfortable parts of life have taught me the most. I'm not going to leave anything out retelling them here. This is also a self-improvement book more broadly. In contextualizing the techniques in stories about my life, I want to avoid the standard do-as-I-do nature of self-improvement books. As Chin-Ning Chu rightfully observes about the self-help industry in Thick Face, Black Heart, in these books the author prescribes a course of action that will lead to the desired result. Typically, it is a plan that has worked for the author and for some of his students, but it doesn't necessarily work well for many readers, even though they carefully follow the author's instructions. For example, two people can read the same book on lion taming. They can enter the lion's cage dressed identically. They can use identical gestures and words to command the lion, but the results will not be the same. One of them will get the lion to jump through the hoop, and the other will end up as a gruesome mess on the floor of the lion's cage. Overall, I believe self-help teachers do more good than harm. Whereas some are more conceptual than others and speak in riddles, others teach well through story or a combination of direct step-by-step instructions with concrete examples. The real trick is in creating contexts in which student and teacher meet each other halfway, and the teacher has one major outcome in mind: to free the student from the teacher as quickly as possible. This is sometimes called teaching by abandonment, an approach I admire in Gary Weber, even if it can seem especially challenging for the student. It works because, if anything, it is the cleaving to teachers that explains why so many people find themselves torn apart by the lions. A lion tamer has dressed, taught, and equipped them as lion tamers, yet they have not made themselves into lion tamers. And the lion knows it. The 3 types of listener this book is for. 1. Those struggling to learn and implement memory techniques because they do not have enough calm to focus for long enough. Even the simplest mnemonic strategies can be difficult to understand in practice if your mind is occupied by unhelpful noise and distraction. 2. Those I've already helped but who want to experience even greater benefits from memory techniques. Adding dedicated meditation practice that draws upon existing memory skills is tremendously rewarding. 3. Those who already meditate who want to add memory techniques to their practice. They will likely also be delighted by new perspectives on old favorites and perhaps pick up a few new meditation techniques along the way. Trigger warning and how to navigate this book. These days, trigger warnings seem to be a necessity. So, for those sensitive to gritty descriptions of mental illness, suicidal ideation, drug use, and violent impulses, stop listening now if you haven't already. I cannot help you reproduce the maps that led me out of hell without frank honesty about what my hell was like. I was scared the first time I shared these struggles on the Magnetic Memory Method podcast and my YouTube channel. But I'm glad I did, gory details and all, because in response, people shared their own stories of hope and transformation. lives have been saved, and I will keep sharing these struggles in ways I hope respects the suffering, while also giving people courage to navigate and free themselves from similar states. A note about terms. Over the years of teaching and writing about memory techniques, I've developed or modified terms from the vast lexicon of memory enhancement strategies bequeathed to us from historical and contemporary explorers in this field. I provide a glossary, and the techniques themselves are detailed in the third part of the book. Throughout, I refer to memory palaces, not a term I invented. It was used by Augustine of Hippo and many memory artists since. You might be more familiar with the notion of keeping a mind palace, Roman rooms, or even memory castles. Whatever you call them, these mental creations are places in the mind based on actual places you know well or other sources like movies and games to store the images and information you are trying to memorize. Any information can be memorized, from vocabulary and phrases to complex formulas in math and science. For the purposes of this book, the ancient information I'll suggest you memorize is wonderful medicine. For some, memorization with memory palaces is a difficult technique, but it's worth it. I found it difficult too when learning it during a dark depression. Yet, the practice soon helped me feel better, and it turns out there's good reason why it boosted my mood. As researcher Dr. Tim Dalglish has shown, this style of using memory can help people with a history of depression and other mental health issues experience relief. Amongst several of his studies, one in particular stands out. Method of loci as a mnemonic device to facilitate access to self-affirming personal memories for individuals with depression. Note that method of loci is another term for memory palace. You might also encounter the term journey method as you explore these techniques, or even apartments with compartments, as one of my first students preferred to call it. No matter what term you use for the technique, relief from mental distress is made possible because this mental tool helps us remember and rapidly access positive affirmations and memories quickly and accurately, even during times of distress. These higher quality memories can help dissolve negative ones, both immediately and for the long term. I also often refer to the magnetic memory method, which is the systematic 21st century approach I developed to memorizing foreign language vocabulary, dreams, names, music, poetry, and much more in ways that are easy, elegant, effective, and fun. This process comes from years of research and practice based on an ancient methodology that humans have preserved, elaborated, and continue to share via a vibrant international community. Although all the best instructors in this community must teach by abandonment because of the nature of the techniques, there is never any need to go it alone. Just search for either my name or magnetic memory method on the internet. You'll find us. With or without our community, this book is structured intentionally to free you from me as a teacher and help you find victory over your own mind through memory training and meditation. You are the only one who can. To this end, there are 4 parts. Part 1. In the Eye of the Storm. In Part 1, I share the background of this book, which is the story of how I transformed my misery into peace by using the techniques taught in the rest of this book. Although I don't know you, chances are you've been drawn to this book because you're in the eye of your own storm and want to get out. Welcome. I'm confident that the entire Magnetic Memory Method community can help you. Part 2. Become the Storm. In Part 2, you'll learn why meditation is so important for enhancing mindfulness and memory improvement, and how memory improvement techniques can help you finally experience mindfulness. The title of the section, Become the Storm, refers to Sam Harris's point that you are not influenced by the storms of external circumstances so much as you are the storm. I take this further by arguing that you need to do more than recognize the wisdom of Harris' insight. You need to become the storm. Becoming the storm and staging the dual games of memory and mindfulness practice will help you remain in a watchful state of becoming. Part 3. Calm the Storm. In Part 3, we dig deep into the techniques. Here I will help you build the mental gymnasium where the workouts needed for mental transformation will occur. There is no place other than your mind where this can happen. This is about your mind and your mind alone, a place where I will appear as a kind of Morpheus to your Neo. The difference is this. When you say, I know Kung Fu like Neo, I can't be there to say, show me like Morpheus. But this book will help you become your own Morpheus so that you won't need me or any teacher ever again. Which isn't to say you won't want more teachers, but your understanding of the role of teachers will likely be changed. Part 4. No More Storms? Part 4 fills a gap I see in so many books that aim to set you free. The truth is, you can experience all kinds of rewards in your brain and still get caught up in destruction. Blessings and bombshells can fire off simultaneously, especially if you have a brain structurally predisposed to impulsive thoughts and behaviors, even if you've been meditating for years. Everything you ever experience happens through a combination of luck, brain chemistry, and a capacity for awareness that only you can sharpen. The final chapters of the book demonstrate how important it is to keep sharpening, keep working, keep cultivating. They are not a resounding declaration of freedom from the mind belted out from a higher plane, but reflections on the kinds of freedom you can achieve through continual learning, practicing, and teaching. Are you ready? I hope you said a resounding yes, either out loud or in your head, because one way or another, the next moment is coming, and there's really no compelling reason not to embrace it with a victorious mind.